Hello everyone, my name is Naue. Nice to meet you and welcome to my talk today on the field of embodied interaction and how we can explore the body as an interface. So today I want to talk to you about, first I start with my journey, so where do I come from, what's my background, what is creative coding, and then the main section will be using the body as interface. There are three aspects to this, motion, code, and design. So I will introduce you to all of these three. And hopefully you will learn something new, might get a bit of inspiration if you're a designer, but also if you're a coder. And yeah, so let's just dive into it. All right, so let's have a look at my journey, because I think this might be interesting for you. Also, maybe you can relate to a few points and yeah, I think it's always interesting to see the journey behind the people who are talking to get an idea where they come from and what's their background. So in short, I'm a designer somehow lost in the world of code. And maybe you remember this scene from the first Harry Potter movie where Hagrid talks to to Harry and reveals to him that he's a wizard. And yeah, somehow this is very relatable. And I still feel like I'm lost in this coding world, surrounded by crazy wizards. But yeah, I'm trying my best to catch up with the people around me. I decided to study at some point. Main question was, should it be design or maybe, something real that you can make a living from? But I went for design, so I studied visual communication in Germany, did my bachelor's degree with like classical, let's say, graphic design background. Since then, I'm freelancing. Most of the work I do or I did is related to web design. And, at some point in life, things happen. So my first son, Jonathan, was born. It changed a lot of things for me. New responsibilities came along. And after that, I went deeper into the field of web, but I changed the perspective and I started front-end coding. And I also started teaching at that point. So there was like a change in perspective for me. And then was a bit stuck and wasn't sure where to continue. So I said, okay, let's go back to studying. And this time I went to Prague in the Czech Republic. Again, visual communication, did my master's degree there. And I would say in hindsight, this really gave me sort of a factory reset. And life happened again. My second son, Benjamin, was born. So even more responsibility. And so some new fields or some fields I wanted to expand on were storytelling, augmented reality, science communication, which I'm still actively researching in, and also the field of creative coding. Because I realized at some point I had to learn so much coding and technical knowledge to do all this web coding stuff that I could also use all of this to start creative coding, because these are all the same technologies. This is also one of the main frameworks. P5.js is also JavaScript. So lots of the things I learned already I could apply here, and I was very happy to find out this connection. And yeah, today I would say I'm sort of a creative technologist. So I'm still teaching creative coding, but I also applied this to my commercial practice by designing and creating these generative tools, which allow you, to create visuals or animations for, let's say, brands or campaigns. And also I'm doing lots of explorations on my own, and one of these explorations is the body as interface. And yeah, who knows where all of this will lead next. Yeah, so currently I'm working in this, let's say, a bit weird intersection of science, tech, and art or design. And but I'm really happy in this field, and I think it's a very good place to be and to explore, and also very fruitful for both, let's say, playful exploration, but also commercial work. Okay, so let's start with a bit of definitions. What is creative coding? So there's a really useful model developed by Patrick Hübner and Tim Rodenbröker, which I always like to show at this point. And they call it the input-output model. So basically on the left side, you can see all sorts of things that we could feed into our code. So we have maybe some sorts of, data. It could be written text. It could be music files. It could be input through a hardware. So let's say it could be webcam recording. So all kinds of things that we can use as data input. Then we do some weird magic to translate it into an output. And then again, the output can be any kind of media, basically. So maybe to give a few examples, let's go to the input side. Let's take, let's say we have a rhythm that could be saved, or the rhythm could be stored as a MIDI file, which is a way to digitalize music. So we have a digital MIDI music file. We could use that as an input, then interpret this file with our code and create some sort of output. So let's say we create an animation, and the animation will include letters. So it's a maybe kinetic typography animation. And maybe we could analyze the height of the notes or the length of the notes and translate this length of the notes into maybe the size or the position of our letters. And so I think what this graph is really what it really manages to show is that any sort of data can be used and translated into any sort of visual or auditory or whatever output. And I think this is really the power of what creative coding can do. And so over the last years, I did lots of research and experiments based on this model. And some of the, let's say, main fields I'm interested in is using coding as a way to create motion, coding design elements, but also coding interaction. Because all of these things, you might, you can create static design elements in some, software that you might use as a graphic designer. You can also create static animations in After Effects or whatever software. But I think the power is once we coded it, so once we defined the rules, once we developed it as a system, everything is can be reactive. We could manipulate things with our mouse. It could be interactive. It could be listening to our voice and change. It could be reacting to sliders. Here you can see a little physical device that I use to manipulate these things. So there's really a huge potential once we coded the system that we can interact with it and create new forms of interaction and motion that might not be possible with, let's say, the traditional design tools in our toolbox. All right. So let's have a look at using the body as an interface. It all started last year with a project 36 Days of Type. Maybe you know it. It's like a yearly challenge on Instagram. And basically each day designers and artists worldwide create letters of the alphabet and then they publish it together. So first day everyone creates an A, then B, C, etc. And I used that challenge as a way to get into motion tracking. So I recently discovered, okay, there's a thing which allows me to track motion. And so I wanted to see, okay, can I use this to create letter shapes, to create letters of the alphabet? So basically each day I try to come up with a new form of interaction and a new way to manipulate a letter, and all based on body and gesture. And I was really intrigued by the results, so I decided, okay, I will continue with this and explore this a bit further. So I will give you a brief personal definition of how I understand embodied interaction. So first of all, it's really about exploring the body as an interface, as opposed to using, let's say, mouse and keyboard, for example. And also, I think everyone has, or we as humans, we have developed such a versatile body and gesture language. And yeah, why not use this to talk to machines instead? And also, I used it as a way to reconnect to my own body and mind. There's also this element of augmented reality, because you can augment these digital layers and elements upon the physical world. Creating playful prototypes, having lots of fun along the way. And I think this is the main point, opening up new paths and just exploring new possibilities. Okay, so the first ingredient in the process of creating these things is motion. And so the first step I always ask myself is, okay, what kind of motion or what kind of gesture could I use to come up with something fun? And usually I try to think of a gesture I might use in my daily life, waving, showering, holding something. And then I try to repurpose these gestures. So, maybe the waving becomes a motion that throws away or interacts with letters that kind of move on the screen. So how can we, just mixing up gestures that we do intuitively with new things. Okay, so once we picked a gesture, we have to decide which tracking model we want to use. All of this is based on mediapipe, which is an open source body tracking algorithm. It's machine learning powered, and it's developed by Google. And basically they developed three main models. The first is tracking the whole pose of the body. Second is tracking only the hand, but very detailed. And the third is tracking the face with lots of points, and it also can recognize like people are smiling or twitching their eyes. So each of these are a bit different, and they also have different points that they can detect. But we can also combine them. So sometimes we might need to combine these different models to achieve the tracking the gesture that we want. Okay, so we picked a tracking model. We have a gesture. Now we have to figure out which points we actually want to track. Because in most of the experiments I made, I usually only needed very few points. Here you can see in the left example, I'm tracking the distance between the tip of the thumb and the tip of the index finger. And this is already very useful. For example, the thing I showed you where I'm scaling a letter between the fingers is just these 2 points on the finger. Or in the middle, you can see sometimes I use angles. So here I'm comparing the angle between point A and B, and you can use this to rotate elements on the screen, for example. And on the right, you can see I'm tracking again a distance. This time I'm only interested in 1 point on my body, which is tip of the index finger again. And I'm tracking the distance to an element on the screen. So this could be, maybe you position some sort of button or interactive element on the screen, and you want to know if your body is touching it, and then you might trigger some sort of action. Okay. Then, of course, there is the layer of code. And I really think code is some sort of a universal language that allows us to talk to machines. And about the process, our expectation usually is, okay, we have a nice idea, we do a few tests, and we get a result, right? That's it. No, unfortunately not. Usually we have this iterative process. So that means, okay, we have an idea, we do a few tests. Okay, maybe one test was bad. We get a new idea. Our original idea might even change in the process. We have lots of steps in between. We get lots of intermediary intermediary results. But I learned to embrace this process, and I accepted that ideas get shaped and reshaped in this process. And once I allowed this process to happen, it really enabled me to create lots of output from one single idea. Through iterative testing, suddenly you have like a huge amount of output, and so I really enjoy this process. So here's an example how this might look like. Recently, I was researching, okay, how can I detect the direction my eye is pointing towards, and it wasn't really possible only using the tracking point. So I had to come up with some way. And my idea was, okay, maybe I can compare different points on the eyeball and then somehow, again, calculate the angle. So there's a function called 8 and 2. And it worked, sort of. So you can see I made lots of different versions. I tried to streamline the whole thing. At some point, I was tracking so many different things that I needed to build some sort of interface so I could really see what I was doing. And at some point I arrived at these two different tracking directions for the eyeballs. It was a bit weird because they don't always align. So they either the tracking has a bit difficulties, or my eyes are not pointing in the same direction. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's again, you can see this whole process in the end is more interesting than simply the output. So always when I document these projects, I always include the whole process, because I really think that all these steps along the way are much more interesting than simply the end result. And also it's a really good practice, because you build up an archive of ideas, of tests, of prototypes, and at some point you will be able to combine all of these. So you have steps in between. Maybe you liked a certain step, you want to go back to it and reuse it for something else later. So that's what I found really useful about this whole approach. Okay, so brief look into the technology. Everything is done in JavaScript. There's other ways to do it, but I mentioned I have this web design background, so for me it was the most intuitive approach. But you might do it in other programming environments as well. And so the nice thing about the setup is it only requires a webcam and a web page, and so it's really accessible. And then we have this, this tracking thing is done by mediapipe, which I already mentioned is this open source machine learning library provided by Google. And then I'm using P5.js, which is like a very popular creative coding framework, and I'm using this to actually draw all of the visuals. So I'm drawing the webcam, I'm drawing the elements on top of the face or the body. So all of this is done in P5.js. And of course, there's lots of testing involved. So all the time I'm building these small prototypes and just testing functionalities. And in these early tests, I'm not really interested in the design or the composition of the screen. I just want to know, okay, is my functionality working as expected? Or maybe there are unexpected things that I also like, so maybe I will continue with those. And usually I build some sort of little visual guidelines or interfaces, so I can understand visually what I'm actually doing there. So if you want to try this by yourself, I built a public repository. It's on GitHub. You can download lots of examples and starter files that I built. So if you want to test this for yourself, feel free to have a look at those examples, and maybe you can create something crazy as well. All right, so maybe let's recap a little bit what this iterative process is that I was talking about. So it's really about working in small baby steps. I always try to document everything I do. Usually it's simply screenshot or screen capture. But as I said, I think the project documentation is really helpful to A, to show others what you're doing, but also B, to just document your ideas and to reuse them for later projects. Always watch out for happy accidents. So lots of things might happen that you haven't planned for, but maybe they're even more interesting than the original idea. And again, build up this archive of ideas, let the process guide the results, and just go with an open mind to it and don't expect a certain outcome. Okay, so the last phase to all of this is actually the design. Okay, so some things I might look out in this phase is how does it look and feel. So we can use typography, so letter shapes, the colors and shapes. We can think about storytelling. We can think about how we position the light and the person interacting on the screen. So we have a sort of performance or composition. And I'm mostly concerned about making it look good, but also making it feel fun. And of course, go crazy. All right, so let's have a look at a few projects that evolved out of this process. First one is the Face Painter. It was a collaboration with Rodolfo Quintas, who's an artist in Portugal. And his idea was he wanted to somehow integrate and reactivate elderly people by exposing them to art and also new technologies. So the focus was really about accessibility and letting people who are uncomfortable with computers interact with their face and give them an intuitive approach towards digital media. So really in this project we were tracking mainly the face, so the upper and lower lip. If they were open, then we draw something on the screen, and then by simply opening your mouth and moving your head, you could draw these colorful ellipses and paintings on the screen. So this one, the dancing team, is an open collaboration. It's still ongoing. And so what I'm doing is I built this sketch. I'm sending it around to dancers or people who are trained to use their body. And then I just simply invite them to play with these mirror avatars that are kind of, so you can see the ones on the top, they are reflecting the movement of the dancer. And the ones on the bottom create sort of a team. So you're in the center, and then on the left and the right you have those companions who mirror your actions. And I'm really fascinated by how other people use these things and the results they come up with. And we have the Voronoi Hulk. It's based on the Voronoi principle, which is a way to, or it's a principle how shapes avoid each other on a certain area. So we distribute points on the screen, and each of these points is surrounded by an area, and these areas cannot touch. That's basically the Voronoi. And so you can see the first step was I wanted to make this interactive. So on the left I'm simply moving my hands along the screen, and these Voronoi shapes start following me. And then the next step for me was to think, okay, is there something that reminds me, or that this reminds me of visually? And then I thought, oh yeah, there's the Michelin Man. And so I use all of these Voronoi elements and place them on the body. And then somehow in the process, this led to this weird Voronoi Hulk figure. Then these dancing soft bodies, this was a project or collaboration with Hello Fluo, which is an Italian design magazine. And I think what's interesting about this is that I tried to recreate these flat 2D animation styles. Also, you can see lots of Keith Haring, of course, in this. So I really wanted to find a way to create animations, flat animations, but again, triggered by motion and by gesture. And in the end, it was really fun to come up with this system and to interact with these shapes. Recently, I was invited by the Finnish National Gallery because they made an open call and they invited generative artists to reinterpret their huge catalog of artworks. And so I made this prototype. Maybe you know the children's book Heads, Bodies and Legs, where you can switch different parts of the body. So I wanted to recreate that with code. And it was really rewarding to see this basically set up in an exhibition. So I could see, okay, how does it work in real space? How do people, again, interact with it? What kind of interface, screens and hardware do I need to make this a physical object? And again, it was really fun to see just the reactions of the people using it. I also collaborate with type foundries. The examples shown here were done with fonts from Superior Type. And so here the initial question was, okay, what if I have some sort of a magnet on my finger, and then, like sand or like water, these letters follow me? And so it's I researched ways to recreate physics. So there are lots of libraries on the web that you can use to sort of create physics engines. And we have these strange letter shapes bumping into each other. There's also the type spitter, so you can also spit out letters from your mouth. Again, really fun and playful explorations. Bubbles is again same category of fun and playful. Here I wanted to see how does it behave, outside of the office, maybe in the context of nature and environment. And I want to simply create something that kids might like, kids might want to play with, and escape the office room, basically. And the last one was done for Inscript Festival. So here I simply tried to create an interactive poster where we have, the headline of the festival, and then I'm simply interacting with the headline. Suddenly we have a nice animation that we can use, for social media or for advertising the festival. All right, so some closing words. Code as a transformative force. So why should we explore code as a tool, and what can it achieve for us? There's a really good quote by Marshall McLuhan. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. And I think this shows very well that it lies in our hands what kind of tools we create, and also that tools are a way for us to reshape our environment and also how people interact with it. So if we come up with our own tools, if we create new tools, it also allows us to shape the way people think, and I think that's very, very powerful. And I see the world of creative coding as a way to explore new frontiers, and also helps me to stay open-minded towards technology, and just to really constantly rethink, okay, what can we do with it? What can it do for us? What is the use case? And what alternatives do we have to the current state? And so it really gives us as creators the power to dream up new forms of coexistence between society and technology. So if we look at this very simplified hierarchy, where maybe code is the fundamental basis that steers machines and technology, and as I elaborated, technology is again influential on the way we live and how we perceive the world. So in short, I think that code really allows us to change society from a basic level. Brief summary, code is a universal machine language. I think we as creators can and should exploit it to dream up new forms or new realities, and we can really use it as a transformative force. Special thanks at this place for 3 people that accompany along the journey for a long time. There's Katja, which we studied together, and we did together. We did the most early prototypes of the body tracking, and she's a really, she's really deep into the field of virtual and augmented reality. Then we have Alistair from Scotland, also a coding genius, also helping me, and I'm in constant conversation with him and asking him technical stuff all the time. Same as Julian, he's a, let's say, web tech guru, and also basically all of these people I'm just constantly in a conversation with about these things that I showed you, and really happy to have them along the whole way. So thanks a lot for listening. It was really fun to introduce you to these fields. If you want to stay in contact with me, here's my Instagram, GitHub, email, and website. I love to hear from you, and see you soon. Bye-bye.